Welcome to the Life of Hair. Now, today's episode, we're going to look at really chunky face frames, and they're definitely made a big insurgence in trend straight into 2023. Off the bat, I have seen so many people wearing much deeper, chunkier face frames, and block coloring is definitely on its way in as a hair trend for 2023, or maybe not all of 2023, but certainly for this first quarter or half of the year. So something you might want to get involved with. It might be coming later to you, and that's something that happens with some trends, is that we see that they take off in certain places earlier and then they catch on a bit later in different places. Now, what we've done is sectioned off a piece of Amy's hairline that is about 2.5 inches in depth, and it runs all the way across. But I'm breaking it up into 4 individual sections. So I've got this first section that kind of runs through the recession area, just so that it's easier to apply and easier to manage in terms of placing the foils. And this is something that obviously I can give you advice on, but it's person to person. Some people's hairlines go back further. Amy's hairline does drop back a fair way, as you can see on the temple area there, but we are leaving no spaces between any of these foils. So it's proper back-to-back foiling. And that's something that's different to maybe a money piece or other techniques that are similar to this. Amy's been on the channel quite a few times before. She works with me in the studio, and by the way, if you watch this all the way to the end, when you see the result, she never looks all that happy. So please don't throw hundreds of comments out there saying she looks miserable, because her natural disposition is one of sort of slightly less than cheerful demeanor, but she's a lovely person. So please don't leave all the hateful comments that were left in the very first video that Amy was in. It really wasn't very nice. But you can see what I'm doing here. We're just going through the technique, continuing to apply those foils. And for anybody that's new to applying foils, the technique that I use is really useful. You can see that I've put the foil onto the head, folded the foil over the comb, the tail of the comb, and placed the foil into the hair, and then saturate the hair of which I want to lift evenly. I'm leaving out the existing blonde hair, fold by a third again, push the flap at the back that I created up, and then that gives me really nice secure foils. And here's a really hot tip for anybody that is struggling to get clean, consistent lift from their bleach work. Application of plenty of product is absolutely paramount, but making sure your sections aren't too thick either. That is really important. The thin sections that I'm taking here will mean that it will lift faster, cleaner, and easier throughout this entire technique. Now, when we're doing foiling techniques on the whole, sometimes we might feel like if we take that thicker section or whatever, it will work fast. It will, we'll cut corners almost. In our mind, we're like, okay, well, big sections, get it done quicker. What we give up is time in the processing. The processing can take so much longer if we're using big, chunky sections. So bear in mind that it's really important that if you want your lightener to work efficiently and well, then you need to really make sure that you are taking finer sections. So just working all the way up now into the corner of the recession area here. And it is really important that you keep these foils tight. Now, you'll note that there are some small hairs that are left out around the hairline, but there's very little we can do about that at this point in time. I mean, you could probably scrape them into a foil, but I'm going to show you a fantastic trick at the end, after we've removed all of the lightener, to really clean up and make this block color look even more solid. Now, I know that for a lot of you out there, you might be looking at this block color thinking, well, this is never going to come to my doorstep. That may be the case, but if it does, at least you'll have seen this, and it will help you understand how to go about it and how to pre-section it and what sort of angle you might want to use. It's a good idea to use diagonal foils like this. It means that you can kind of stick to the hairline much tighter. And it also saves kind of when you've got widow's peaks and things like that, you can go across those much easier, especially when you're trying to get the entire hairline in, as we are here, and create that really strong, bold stripe of colour, if you like, going across the front hairline. But equal to that, what we don't want to do, for me anyway, personally, is make it look too obvious. I mean, there are times where you want that very visual stripe and you want to be able to see the root area, but I like to sort of semi-integrate it with the hair around it. You'll see that at the end. I mean, I was watching some videos the other day of some people who were doing stripy techniques, and actually they were going for the kind of whole hog visual stripe right bang on the front hairline. And we do have a little bit of this, especially at the parting area where you've got a very visual stripe, but further into the technique you'll see that it's really kind of softly integrated. And you'll see in some parts of this technique there is pieces of hair that hasn't had light on it for a very long time, and like this section here, I've covered nearly all of that section with exception to that tiny little piece at the front there from an old money piece technique that we'd done a little while ago. But we're just going to work all our way back to the parting here, and it doesn't take all that long to apply this technique. And that's one of the nice things about this particular technique. If you wanted to integrate other foils into it, so you wanted to do your bold stripe at the front and then leave a small gap and then do a more traditional highlighting technique behind it, that is also going to work very nicely. And as I mentioned previously, do hang on for that little tip about making sure you get rid of all of those tiny little dark hairs around the front hairline, because it's very easy to end up with those very small baby hairs that are around the hairline left dark. But you can get rid of them really quickly at the backwash, much faster. Finer hair always lives quicker. So I'll show you that in just a second. Last couple of foils here, right up to the parting, before we jump into that little trick. And we'll also show you the toning phase. I pre-toned Amy's hair with Fanola purple shampoo, and then I went in with a direct dye that was a kind of deep lavender shade, just to give it a little bit of colour. Amy used to have blue hair and green hair and all sorts of colours, but in recent years she's had more natural. She's actually gone back to having her hair blonde at the front, so this is now blonde, and it looks just as good blonde as it did purple. And it obviously, because we were only using direct dye, we didn't create any unnecessary staining on the hair, so it just went back to being a really nice shade of blonde without any effort or any re-bleaching of the hair. So here's the last section. You can see all the way up to the corner there, just using that horizontal brush stroke to make sure I distribute the product nicely through that section, as it's probably fractionally thicker than I'd want it to be. Just quickly went through and applied a darker colour to Amy's hair, just so that you know once you see the finished result that was actually done deliberately. This was a very dark black shade to really contrast that front hairline. Now you can see the technique that I used here, where all we've done is apply our pre-lightener to the front hairline again at the backwash for about 10 minutes. And that is just to make sure that all those tiny little baby hairs are bleached away, and you get that really clean, strong, bold stripe. It's kind of a bit annoying sometimes, obviously, when you do these techniques, if you do have those little dark hairs left in there. You can also paint in between each of your foils whilst it's processing if you want to. But here we go. Here is the colour all finished and done, and you can see what I mean by having a slight bit of integration there between the darker colour and this very bold stripe of colour that we did. You're obviously going to get it really bold on the parting, but I didn't want it to be all stand out, so that's why that diagonal backwards section helps to create that. So if you go from the parting 2 inches, 2.5 inches back from the parting diagonally backwards towards the ear, you'll get a little bit more of a shadowed effect just behind the main event, the big stripe of colour that you see right on the parting. Okay guys, have a great week. I'll see you very soon.